Well, greetings, students. We're going to cover week 7 lecture, but before we get started on our lecture, let's do a little housekeeping. This week, you are supposed to view a TED Talk, and it's going to be presented by Dan Pallotta. The title of the TED Talk is The Way We Think About Charity. It's dead wrong. So that should be exciting. Okay, so for housekeeping, let's talk about what's due this week. You have the Kimball County fundraising plan that we're going to talk about. How do you determine how to raise funds? And is the Kimball County organization doing the right thing? That's going to be in your Myers text. Also, part 2 of your service learning project is due this week. So you don't want to hesitate, get that turned into the discussion board. And then after today, after you submit it, go and take a look at what your colleagues are writing about. Give those very inspirational critiques, but also ask poignant questions. Remember, I give you points on your feedback to your peers as well as your submission. So you want to take time and effort to review what your colleagues are saying. You're required to respond to at least 2 of your peers in order to get full points for that portion of the project. Okay, so let's get started. Fundraising. We are talking about the parameters of fundraising. And what is fundraising? It's also known as development in the nonprofit sector. Nonprofit institutions need cash with which to carry out their programs. You know, it takes money to make money. That's gonna be the theme, overarching theme for this class. It takes money to make money. A historical fact is Americans do give generously. Throughout our country's history, they customarily have given away their money for various reasons, whether that's charity, but it's always for a common good. Americans' interpretation of what is in the best interest of society can be defined by where they put their money, right? Just to talk about trends, one of the things that trends are now happening is that more people, young people are giving, but they're giving to charitable organizations more than they're giving to nonprofit churches. So you need to pay attention to that. Churches need to find ways to generate income. So this may be really good information that you can carry back for those of you who are in some type of lay ministry. But also know that the nonprofit sector is a resource for generating funds. So when we talk about raising development, the most important figure to monitor for a nonprofit organization is the net contributed income. I want you to remember that term, the net contributed income. That is the number of contributors and the sources of funding. This information is going to be what you're going to pull up in your Weinstein text. You have 3 textbooks or sources of information from your coursework this semester, and this is the Weinstein text. So net contributed income includes the resources received from various donors or fundraising efforts. And we're going to talk about fundraisers and the fact that fundraisers or nonprofit organizations must not become overly dependent on just a few sources of income. You know, you hear about grants, right? And you hear about at least an annual campaign. We'll talk about that a little bit later, those golf tournaments and silent auctions. But a nonprofit organization, in order to be sustainable, okay, I want you to remember that word, sustainable, need to have a diversified stream of income. Okay, so Weinstein talks about in addressing issues around fundraising that a nonprofit organization, by monitoring and improving the number of donor contributions, automatically increases their ability to operate and function in a sustainable way. They also have to increase board members' contributions each year. They need to be concerned about increasing the number of people personally contacted each year. And those are the sources of an organization's contributed income and can continue to increase revenue. So these terms I am throwing out, you should know by now: revenue and income sustainability. Different types of funding modes include annual funds, membership drives, collecting operating funds, single year contributions, special projects, and major gifts. When we talk about annual funds, we're looking at those resources that are obtained from encouraging people to give and encouraging supporters to make multiple gifts throughout the year. Can you think of one nonprofit organization that you either listen to on the radio or you listen to or you look at on television that stops about every 3 months and says, as you're looking at this great program, we'd love for you to give to blank? I wonder if you can fill in the blank. I can think of one or two places. I love PBS. I love public broadcasting. We talk about listening to NPR. And every once in a while, just when I'm looking at Downton Abbey, because I love Downton Abbey, they'll stop the show and say, we just so appreciate you, our faithful givers. We'd like for you to contribute to PBS so that we can continue to bring you great footage like Downton Abbey. Doesn't that aggravate you? But if you really like Downton Abbey and you really like organizations like PBS, which is a nonprofit organization, you'll give. So that's called annual funds. There's also capital campaigns. And we talked about capital being those funds that are used for what? The purchase of large buildings like cars or land. And it's a set of fundraising and outreach and activities focused on raising money for those specific needs, for that next building that you want because your program has grown. Traditionally, this need has been a large purchase such as, give me other things besides a building. How about a park in downtown Dallas? Clyde Warren Park is another example of how a capital campaign was used to raise money for the common good of society. Other different types of fundraising modes include endowment campaigns. Those operate much like a capital campaign, but they also encourage donors to give gifts as a form of when they pass away. So an endowment may be, you've heard of the endowment fund for the arts. Well, these are donors who their parents may have passed away, but in the name of their parents, they continue to give money to the arts. Special projects, those special projects seek larger investments for new projects, new starting up. A good example, UNT Dallas is going to have dorms pretty soon. But you know what? The state is only going to give UNT Dallas just a little bit of money. Because UNT Dallas is a nonprofit, it has to work and raise money for this special project. That dorm, the dorms that are going to be coming up, will be considered a special project. It's not necessarily 100% funded by the state. So let's talk about common campaign characteristics. We talked about all of these different types of campaign. So some commonalities, I want you to write this down. These are some common themes. They're narrowly defined and they need focus. Right? Their specific financial goal. It may be $1 million in the next 6 months or $5 million in the next 5 years. A time frame for meeting that goal. I just gave you that example. An identified group of volunteers are going to work on it. And in a nonprofit organization, the largest group of volunteers that are expected to help raise money is the board of directors. Write that down. The board of directors is expected to be taking the lead on raising funds. Also, another characteristic is a focus on raising major gifts and a plan for recognition of those major gift donors. Students here, if you've received a scholarship, a donor gave that money on your behalf. And so at some point there's a luncheon that says, thank you so much for giving to UNT Dallas. When we talk about other different types of strategies, some of the things that you're doing in your service learning, direct mail, maybe select mail, you're working on a newsletter. If you're doing phone solicitations and you're calling people to give, President Obama was the best at phone solicitations. That's one of the major ways he raised funds for his campaign. Special events, large number of requests from a list of potential donors. If you're participating in that, doing your service learning, you are actively engaged in fundraising.